Okay, so you had a question about calcium?
Serum, it says I
Serum.
have low serum calcium.
Serum calcium, okay. Serum calcium doesn't have very much to do with how much calcium you take in, supplementation, your dietary intake of calcium, doesn't have a lot to do with that. Calcium, the calcium marker has more to do with the functioning of your thyroid gland.
Oh.
So if there's calcium that's
Which ties in with the fact that this report said I have low thyroid hormone.
okay, so that's what happens most of the time. So low calcium most of the time has to do with low functioning of the thyroid gland. It can also have something to do with whether or not you're getting enough vitamin D. If you have low vitamin D, you're usually going to have low serum calcium also. Or magnesium. If you have low magnesium, then that can also give you a low serum calcium. So you have to look at all of those things. And the only way to really know is to have the answer to that question, and this is what I'm talking about. With blood work, you have to not just look at one marker, you have to look at other corroborating markers. So if we were looking at whether or not your calcium was low because it was thyroid caused, then we have to have a thyroid panel in order to look at that and evaluate it. And you evaluate the thyroid gland. If you, she's hiding in the bushes over here. Can I see that? If you have a low vitamin D, then you have to test that. And if the reason for your calcium is because you have low vitamin D, then you have to test your vitamin D and find out, is that true? And same thing, if it's caused from low magnesium, well, the only way you're going to know that is to test for magnesium. So there's three reasons right there. You could be also the parathyroid gland not working as good as it should be. So there are markers in the blood work that give us answers to all those questions, and you just have to ask the right questions and get the right blood markers in order to make an evaluation on what's going on. It's not like, because most people would see that low calcium there and say, oh my God, I must need some more calcium. I'm going to run down the store and get calcium. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with most of the thyroid gland. So that's a good question.
And BUN results have something to do with the kidneys?
BUN?
Yeah.
BUN is blood, urea, nitrogen. So BUN is made in the liver.
Oh.
And the kidneys get rid of it. So it's a really nice marker, because if it's low, then it's telling us the organ that's supposed to be making it isn't working as good as it should be. That's the liver. And if it's elevated, then it's telling us the organ that's supposed to be getting rid of it isn't working as good as it should be.
That's very high.
But that's the kidneys. Now, in order to make a determination on whether or not it's a kidney problem that you're looking at, you just don't look at that one also. You have to look at some of the other things in the blood work that indicate that maybe the kidneys aren't working so great. Something else that would show up is you would have a elevated creatinine.
It's normal.
Creatinine is elevated, is normal? Okay. All right, so the other thing you want to look at is GFR. Sometimes I put a little small e in front of it. EGFR, is that on there? Probably near the top of the
Yes, it is.
What number is that?
There are two of them on there. One of them is 35.
One of them's for African Americans and one's for non-African.
And one's 40.
And you're non-African American?
I'm non-African American.
Okay.
So why did they read
what-
African American? Oh, I know what you're saying. If.
Yeah. So what was your number? Non-African American?
35.
Okay, that's low. You want to see that GFR. You want to see that be more than 60.
Why did my doctor call and tell me? Have the nurse call and tell me everything came out fine on this report except for my thyroid when I've got these highs and lows.
Right. Well, it should say H's and L's on there. Those are pretty low. 35 is pretty low. So your EGFR is pretty low. It's so you're 35, and that should be about 59.
Mm-hmm.
It's too low. What that means is that your kidneys are not filtering the urine sufficient. They're not concentrating the urine sufficiently to be able to keep your electrolytes and everything in balance. So that may be some of the reasons why you might be having some cramps and that kind of stuff. See what I mean?
But you're okay otherwise.
Yeah.
You're okay otherwise. Nurse
So-
told you it was okay.
Now, now you have to, one of the things you have to remember with blood work is that these reference ranges here are gonna be different than normal healthy person reference ranges. And I know we've talked about that with some, all of you aren't sure about what I'm talking
Okay.
about, so let me give you an example of what I'm talking about because it's important. And you asked about the thyroid. Let me see if you can see your thyroid marker on here. TSH. Your TSH is beautiful. Your T4 is low. Now, what else we got here? Okay. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
All right. So let's look at laboratory reference ranges first, okay? And so here's a major thyroid marker that most people use. It's thyroid stimulating hormone, okay? Now the range for thyroid stimulating hormone, can you see it on there? Elma?
Yeah, we're doing good.
Yeah.
No.
0.5 to 4.7.
Okay, so beautiful. Say that again.
0.5.
0.5
to
okay,
4.7.
to 4.7?
Yes.
Okay,
You didn't get new markers still, huh?
I know.
I almost bought some for you the other day.
I'll get some. I was away this weekend. Okay, so in this one, LabCorp, it's point. Let me see. Let me try this one here. This one, LabCorp, is 0.45 to 4.5. They're different, right? These are labs right here in Vero Beach. Yours is LabCorp. What lab is yours?
East Coast.
East Coast Labs. Okay.
Yep.
Now I've seen these values here at 0.3, while as high as 6.1. Okay. Now why are they different?
Methods they use to
Huh?
get the readings and how they get the readings.
Well,
The methods they use.
yeah. The point is that these come from the same city, and they're different values here. So what does that tell us? It tells us that these numbers are not national standards that all labs adhere to, right? All the labs in the country don't use the same lab values. The particular laboratory is going to have its own particular reference range. Now, when you see that, and you realize that that's what these numbers are, that they're the numbers for that particular lab, what's the next question you have to ask yourself? Where do they get the numbers, right? So where they get the numbers is from the people that go to that particular lab.
So the average amount?
The average for that lab.
From the, that's what I meant.
Yeah, the people go in there, they average out all the people that go there for those
To
ranges.
that particular lab, yes.
It's like doing it on a curve.
It is. But now the next question you ask is, who goes to the labs?
The sick people.
Everybody.
Yes. So these are sick people numbers, aren't they?
Mhm.
You're going to go to the lab and have your blood drawn, and you're going to be sitting next to somebody that's got an oxygen tank. And another person next to you is on chemotherapy. And the other person is a diabetic. And the other person is a hypothyroid person. The other person's a hyperthyroid person. That's where these numbers come from. So when you get your numbers at the lab, and they say you're high or low depending on what you're compared to for a sick person. Now, do you want to be compared to what a sick person numbers are?
No.
Right. So the point is, that if these are sick people numbers, then normal healthy people numbers have to be much narrower, right? So for this value here, this TSH, the normal value is 1.8 to 3.0. Those are normal people ranges.
That's normal
Yeah,
ranges?
those are normal ranges. That's from the American Endocrine Society. Those aren't my numbers,
So why isn't it standardized?
because they use the numbers that go to that particular lab.
Okay, but the question is, why aren't they standardized? Instead of going through with the sick people, why are they allowed to do that in that manner?
Well, there's probably several reasons. If somebody's really sick, they need to know that. So, because they're gonna be a lot, because here's what happens. Here's what happens. Because I see it every single day. People come in and they tell me the same thing all the time. That I had all my numbers checked and everything's fine. And I look at their numbers and they're in here. They're in here.
And that's normal because they're not feeling sick or anything.
Well, the point is that these people are gonna have symptoms and nothing's gonna be done for them because they're not in the sick person range. If you're not sick, the doctor can't treat you, right?
Ooh, didn't think about that.
Yeah. And I see it, that's what I see all the time. So if you went to see the doctor because you're having, your energy's really low and your hair's falling out and you got constipation and, you know, your limbs are always cold and, you know, you have mental fogginess, all these are thyroid symptoms, right? And you come in and your number is right here. And the doctor says, yeah, you know, you did your thyroid numbers and your thyroid's fine. You're not sick. But you're not healthy either, right? These are healthy people numbers here. So the question is, do you want to be healthy or you want to just be not sick?
Feel better.
These are sick people, these are not sick people, these are healthy people. But these not sick people are going to have symptoms. So that's the way you look at it. So when I see something, and how is the game played? Here's the way the game is played. Oh, your thyroid's fine, I'll see you in 6 months. You come back in 6 months and it's over here. And the doctor looks at it and says, yeah, it's a little bit higher, but you know, don't worry about it, you're still in the normal range, everything's fine, I'll see you in 6 months. And you come back in 6 months and you're over here. Oh my God, now we gotta put you on Synthroid now. We gotta take care of this, you're sick now. I've been telling you that back here, Doc. Now finally my number is up here, and you're finally listening to me, okay? So,
But what could have been done
Huh?
back,
huh?
the first time it was on?
3.0.
No, the first little dot you put on.
Here?
You said,
No, on the 3.0 range, the normal range.
Yeah,
no, as you went up with that circle.
yeah, here?
Okay,
Yeah.
it should have been addressed, I would say, at least the second circle.
What's your symptoms?
Or-
Well,
or, you know,
but you're not in the sick range, you're still in the normal healthy range.
But it's still moving
Yeah.
towards,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
moving.
Yeah,
And I can't,
They want you to give
they
us.
can't put you on
I
medication.
can't, yeah,
until-
right. And I can't blame the doctors for that because, you know, that the doctor might want to put you on something here, but he knows or she knows that the insurance company isn't going to pay for this because there's no justification for giving you thyroid medication here because you're not sick. If the insurance company's not going to pay to keep you well, they're going to pay you, maybe
No,
pay,
that's-
if you get sick, they might pay.
That's CYA again, huh?
Yeah. So you have to watch that, that's what we're talking about, that's the blood work, all the values, like I gave, that form I gave you, you'll see on the functional range, the form I gave you, yeah.
Dysfunctional.
Yeah, okay, that functional range is normal, healthy people numbers. All of these are,
Okay, all these are normal.
yeah, so let me just show, nobody can see anything, Carol. So here's a report that I gave Carol, and here's the different markers, the blood markers that I took from, you know, her lab report here. And this is the lab report so I took all these numbers from the lab report, and I just put it on this one.
Oh, you generated that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I made that.
You did a
Yep.
good job.
I created that.
You're doing well with your access in Excel.
Sure.
How do you know which lab to trust to give you the most accurate
You can't at this
reports
point.
when you're healthy.
They'll give you an accurate report of what your value is, but they're not gonna give you it's not gonna be an accurate report if you take that value, because if you go to East Coast Labs, or you go to LabCorp, you go to Quest Labs, on the same day, most likely you're gonna get the same value of a particular marker. Where it is compared to that laboratory's high and low, sick and not sick, is different, depending on the lab. So what I do is I take the lab values and I put them on here, and what I compare people with is the functional ranges. The values that I have here are functional range numbers. And so wherever you have a comment over here, then that means that that value is either too high or too low compared to a normal healthy person.
Do you have that
Values.
right off?
No, so, so that's what, and we'll go through some of these things here, not yours in particular, but you'll see what I'm talking about. Like we were looking at with your son, with the calcium being low. Well, there's many reasons why calcium might be low, so you don't want to just look at calcium and run down the health food store and get calcium. You gotta look at the thyroid, you gotta look at magnesium, you gotta look at vitamin D.
Well, I've been taking both.
Magnesium and vitamin D? All right, well, here's something else that showed up in your thing here. You asked for it. No, this is good though, because a lot of times, because I get lab values from, all over the place, all over the country. People come from different parts of the country, and they're gonna come here, and I ask them if they got any recent blood work done, and can you bring any recent blood work with you, or fax it to me ahead of time, and so I can get, that's the same, the same thing. The values are gonna be sick people numbers compared to normal healthy people numbers, okay? So Thelma's normal TSH marker was completely normal. Okay, it's completely normal. So if this is the only marker, and I've seen this before, that this is, somebody comes in, I ask, they're having, obvious thyroid symptoms, and they say, everything was fine. They had my thyroid checked, and everything was fine. The only marker they checked was this one here. Now, this TSH, it doesn't even come from the thyroid gland. The TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone, okay? It's a stimulator. It comes from the pituitary gland. If you took a line and you drew a line, and both those lines meet in the middle of your head, that's where the pituitary gland is. And the pituitary gland sends this signal down to your thyroid gland from here down to here. That signal is TSH. So here's your thyroid gland right down here, and your thyroid gland makes this hormone T4, which is on Thelma's blood panel there. And so the thyroid makes T4, it makes a little bit of T3 too, but for the most part it makes T4, and the T4 gets into your blood, and it changes, or it gets converted into T3, active thyroid hormone. But this T4 goes up to your pituitary, and the pituitary reads that and says how much you got coming out here. You got too much coming out of here, you don't have enough coming out of here, what's going on? So if you don't have enough thyroid hormone coming out of here, thyroid, then the pituitary does what? The pituitary says, hey, don't have enough coming out here, you need to work harder, get to work, get to work, get to work. I need to increase the production of T4 from here. So the thyroid stimulating the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone, is elevated. Make sense? The signal from here is going to be elevated because you don't have enough coming out of here. And this is the whipping boy says, get to work, get to work. So it increases the stimulation to here. So definition of a low thyroid is you got the TSH elevated, and the T4 coming out of here is low. Thelma's TSH is perfectly normal, but the T4 coming out of here is really low. So, that being low, what should happen? If the TSH coming out of here, I mean, the T4 coming out of your thyroid hormone is not enough, then your TSH should be what? Should be higher, should be elevated. Thymus T4 coming out of the thyroid gland is low, but her TSH is perfectly normal. Where's the problem in there? The problem there is the pituitary, right? Pituitary's not responding to this, not enough thyroid hormone coming out of here, so the pituitary is not responding appropriately and jacking up that TSH.
So what test would show the pituitary is overworking?
It's underworking.
The pituitary is underworking
Yeah,
and
it's
it's signaling
underwork-
down here to get this guy to go?
Yeah, but because with Thelma's numbers here, the thyroid, the hormone coming out of the thyroid is low.
Right, that's hypo.
Yeah, it's low. Yeah, it's hypothyroid. Now, the pituitary is not mounting a sufficient response to bring that T4, stimulate this to make more T4. So this pituitary up here isn't making a response. So you look at just the TSH from here, it looks fine. But the stimulation that is giving the thyroid isn't enough.
So TSH then is actually showing how fast or how hard the pituitary gland is working.
Yeah.
And TS3 and TS4 is telling it, or giving you an indication of either I'm doing my job or I'm lazy.
Yeah, how the thyroid is working. Yeah.
Okay, okay, thank you.
So the thyroid is not mounting a response. Well, is it not mounting a response? And that's a good question. Then you have to evaluate, is it not mounting a response because the pituitary isn't sending sufficient signal, or is it not, it's, you know, the thyroid's in the normal healthy range, but the thyroid's not able to make it. It's not able, so is it really a pituitary problem, or is it here? So the blood work can kind of give you those indications. You know, blood work, so you might, you know, so for this, yeah, it would be nice to have a couple of other markers. But you see how intricate these things, it's not like one thing means the same thing all the time.
You gotta keep them balanced.
Yeah, you gotta look at this part of the blood work like we looked at her BUN. Her BUN was elevated. Well, one of the first thing you look at if the BUN is elevated, then you look at the creatinine. When the creatinine is elevated, then that's probably a good indication that the kidneys aren't working. But it wasn't. Her creatinine was okay. So now I wanted to go and look at the GFR. The GFR was the glomerular, which means kidneys, filtration rate. It's how good are the kidneys acting as a filter on things. And hers was low. So that's a corroboration. That's a verification that the kidneys aren't working quite as good as they should be. So you wouldn't base a decision on one marker. You know, got to look at the other things that are causing it to happen too. So
One more question, and I'll shut up, let somebody else have the floor. On my A1C,
yeah,
it says increased risk for diabetes, -6.4.
yeah, okay. They start worrying about it when it gets around 5.7. So what's the hemoglobin A1C? And you
But I
see-
am a diabetic, why doesn't it show that up?
Well, it does. It shows that you're, when you're diabetic, they want to make sure you stay below 6. You're at 6.4?
Oh, that's not important.
Okay, it says glycemic control for adults with diabetes, -7.
Yours is 7, okay. So, yeah, what'll happen if you stay at 7, they'll fire you.
And my result came back 7.4.
7.4, yeah. So, what hemoglobin A1C, that number, hemoglobin, you'll see it abbreviated, hemoglobin A1C. Hemoglobin A1C, you can think of that as like a 3-month average of what your daily blood sugar is. Your daily blood sugar, the glucose, when you look at glucose on your blood panel, That's a very fickle marker. It could depend on what you had the night before. If you had a glass of wine the night before, that can jack up your glucose. You know, if you had, you know, too many sweets the night before, if you had a really big meal, that can jack up your glucose. So the glucose marker is kind of fickle. The hemoglobin A1C is a much more stable marker for determining what's going on with somebody's blood sugar. And the hemoglobin A1C, because it's a 3-month average, you don't even have to fast for it. Because it's not going to change with one meal. It's an overall average of your blood sugar over the course of 3 months.
So what do? They do it every month?
What, blood sugar?
The HbA1c, what do they do it once a month to get an average?
Oh, you can do it, well, most people that are diabetics usually prick their finger and what is it right now? Because I need control right now. If it's too high, I need control right now. If it's too low, I need control right now. So they usually use the blood glucose stick, because if he goes too low, you die.
Do you use that?
Never have.
Yeah, so, you know, some people check it really frequently, and Medicare's kind of put a stop to that and not allowing people to buy the amount of strips that they need in order to, you know, test their glucose more frequently, and the things that are not cheap either. But it would, you know, allow people to have more control over their blood glucose if they would, you know, let them, you know, they pay for it like they always have.
What I have found control in my diabetes is I have a normal breakfast.
It's supposed to be off. Go ahead.
And I have my heavy meal at lunchtime, and I have a light meal at night. Otherwise, my sugar's sky high the next morning.
Yeah.
If I had a heavy meal for supper.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people like that, and diabetics have to play with their particular picture. Excellent book to help you with how to handle diabetes is the Diabetes Solution with Richard Bernstein. You can go on my website and watch the diabetes workshop. I did a really nice workshop on that, and I talked extensively about Bernstein and why, if you're a diabetic, you really got to get his book.
Who's that?
Richard Bernstein.
B-E-R?
B-E-R-N-S-T-E-I-N.
I had to go around with values about a year ago with uric acid. One doctor took it and said, "Oh, you got gout." Put me on allopurinol. Went to my internist, he said, "No, I don't think I would take it, it's not that high." Had to go to my orthopedic doctor, and I said to him, "Well, they're saying I have gout." He said, "Well, what was the values?" And I told him, he said, "I wouldn't take it either."
Yeah, the first reason people have excessive uric acid is insulin resistance diabetes.
I had no problems with my toes, my feet, or anything like that.
Yeah, but that's the first reason. Next to the second reason on the list why people have elevated uric acid is gout. But the first reason is diabetes. So, and uric acid is an inflammatory substance, and so therefore diabetes by definition is an inflammatory state. So you can get elevated uric acid from having insulin resistance or diabetes also. So, anybody know what these guys are?
Cells, blood cells.
Those are red blood cells, yeah. And you can see they're not spherical, right? They're kind of elongated, and they're very malleable. They have to go through these one-cell valves, and they kind of squeeze through like a rat, you know, squeezing through a little tiny hole in the door. They can kind of squeeze themselves one portion out into the next part. Okay. So here's what we're talking about. And so this is, the point is, it's your blood. It's not somebody else's blood, this is your blood. And how do you know what you need? You know, you get these symptoms and everybody's got an opinion about what you should be taking because you have these particular symptoms, right? And you know, you want to stop guessing because your blood is going to give you what it is that you really need. It's not, you know, you take the guesswork away. Otherwise, here's where you get most of your information, right? Friends, family, magazines, TV, radio, internet, health.
That'll work.
Yeah. You know, so everybody's going to have an opinion about what you should be doing with your health, don't they? You need to be doing this because I saw Dr. Oz last night and he was talking about this, and then I read this in that veritable medical journal, the Reader's Digest. And you know, then they were talking in the Reader's Digest that you should be doing this for that. So everybody's got an opinion. You know, I know somebody whose sister-in-law had a friend whose mother tried this and it worked for them. Why don't you try it? Okay? So just because something works for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It's your own particular configuration that you need to handle. And the blood work, since it is so personalized, it's your blood work. And if you look at it from that perspective of being very specific to you, then you can really hone in on what it is that you really need to do for yourself. Like with Thelma, we were talking about the calcium. That doesn't yet, if you know what to look for, you're not going to run down the health food store and get some calcium. It doesn't make sense. It's not going to help you. Family, and they're going to give you the best of their opinion. You know, I'm only telling you this because I love you. But you know, you really should try this. You know, leave me alone. And you know, magazines and TV, radio, you're going to see ads on there to get whatever it is that somebody wants to be selling you, right?
Yeah.
And so is that information you can really trust? You know, I know I want to get some of that Lunesta. I got to get some Lunesta.
Sleep.
I mean, that guy just kind of floating around now. He gets up out of bed and he just, man, I want some of that stuff, you know. It's all advertising, isn't it?
Sure.
It's just there to make a fantasy for you to, you know, fix whatever it is you think you're having wrong with you. Internet, you can find anything on the internet to bolster any opinion that you have, and bolstering. Yeah, you can find corroborating information, verifiable information that this is going to be good, and you can find corroborating information to verify completely the opposite of what this one was, right? It's all out there for you if you want to look for it. So when I look at internet sources to try and verify what's going on, I try and go to some of the things that are going to be a little bit more impartial. So you can go to some place like PubMed. PubMed is the PubMed, P-U-B-M-E-D, PubMed.com. And that's a repository of information for the National Institute for Health. P-U-B-M-E-D, PubMed. And that's a repository of information for the National Institute for Health. And all the people who do scientific studies, it gets recorded in PubMed. Sometimes it's just the abstract, sometimes you can get the complete article.
You need a password or something else?
No, it's completely free, yeah.
So WebMed, is it valued?
WebMed, not as much, because they have paid advertisers that come on there and advertise on there too. There's nothing like that on PubMed. Another place you can go is Google Scholar.
Google Star.
Google Scholar, it's all one word, Google Scholar, googlescholar.com.
I can see my email coming in now from them tracking me there. And that's your problem when you get on Google.
Yeah, but but Google Scholar only has scientific studies on there too. And then you get information from the health food stores, a lot of times, right? And who's usually there at the health food store? A lot of
Salesman.
time-
People who are
Somebody,
selling.
yeah, so an hourly worker that's making, $12 an hour, and, they're trying to help you. Oh, you have psoriasis? Here, take this, try this. Now, a lot of people really find a lot of value from this. Here, why don't you try it? One of the things you want to look at when you go to the health food store is, does the person there that's giving you the information look really healthy? And newsletters can, they can be a good source of information. And then lectures, something like this, if it's gonna give you some information to go out there and look a little further, and I can give you some resources and give you a little bit of direction, then, well, you're on your way.
You know what, even your own family doctor doesn't give you that information.
Well, God bless them. I mean, they are so inundated with sick people that a lot of times
But there are tools that they can use that they're not allowed to use. And that's what bugs the daylights out of me.
Yeah, I know. A lot of it's being run by the insurance companies.
Exactly. They tell you who, what, when, and
Determine,
where.
okay, you need to spend this amount of time on that. We're not gonna, don't say you have to spend this amount of time, but if you spend more than this amount of time, then we're not gonna pay you for it.
That's it.
So
That's incentive.
I just wish more MDs would look at the holistic side of medicine as much as they do
They can't do it. That's what he just said. The insurance pays their salaries and they want the money. They put all that money into schooling.
well, like I say, they are inundated with
Pharmaceuticals,
people.
not pharmacies.
Pharmaceuticals push
Yeah.
their drugs.
And, there's just so many people that are sick, sometimes you just don't have enough time to spend like you would with everybody.
That's no excuse.
So how do we know what we need? And so, and this is what I was talking about, everybody's got a passionate opinion about what you should be doing with your health. Everybody's got these diets and claims and nutrition, and this, so this is where you put it into the context. Is your blood showing you that some of these things, these nutrients and claims and dietary things might be helpful? Beautiful thing, we can be very specific with blood chemistry. You can get complete thyroid panels. You can find out everything that's going on with your cholesterol and liver and kidneys, and what's going on with your white blood cells, your red blood cells, your sugar, different specialty tests. You can find anything in the blood. They can test for anything, and they can test to see whether or not you have antibodies to your own brain.
And that's gonna benefit you now, so you're not gonna shut down your brain?
It would benefit you to know that, because then you might be able to do some things to modulate the immune system so it doesn't do its attacking jobs on whatever tissue it's attacking at that particular time.
Whatever cells I have left
Yeah.
at this point.
But we're going to talk about that next week, and I think we're talking about that next week. Blood, no, when is it?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? No, it's not. It's the workshop on autoimmune problems. I don't know when that's coming out. Autoimmune, okay. So all of these things you can get: blood sugar, red white blood cells, liver, kidneys, cholesterol, in the basic blood panel. You can go Wednesdays, you can go over to East Coast Labs on when they only do it on Wednesdays. It's a really cheap panel you can get. You can get a couple of thyroid markers. You can get a complete thyroid, cholesterol panel. You can get.
This was $63 for these
Yeah.
panels.
Okay.
And
So,
you can do more.
so that's a CBC, a CMP, a hemoglobin A1C. Did you do this on Wednesday?
Mhm.
Yeah.
$63.
$63. So for $63, she's got a pretty nice
TSH
payment.
and
The
the
TSH and the T4,
Yep.
hemoglobin A1C, No lipid panel on here, right?
Nothing was over $20 for a panel. I got the lipid, I have my own lipid, that's why it wasn't on there.
Okay, so you had that anyway. Okay, so that's why we didn't order that. Okay, but the lipid panel would have added $20 onto that, so for $80, I belong to a co-op where I can get blood markers done really cheaply. And my discounted price, that whole thing probably would have cost, probably about $150, my discounted rates. Someplace else you're gonna pay $300-400 just for that panel. She paid $80 for.
63.
Well, put 20 in, add $20 onto it, yeah, so.
The thyroid, isn't
Yeah.
that normally done like once a year?
Depends on whether somebody,
If you have a thyroid, I take,
Synthroid.
well, I take the generic for Synthroid.
yeah, levothyroxine.
Exactly. But they kind of say once a year,
Yeah, I know.
I think they do it more than that.
You can go out, you can go to the
Yeah, I
East Coast
can go
Labs
and get
every
it done.
every Wednesday and get it done if you
Yeah.
want to.
Mhm.
That would-
She
that
just
would be helpful.
started asking for test results, and I told her to keep them,
Yeah,
and that's what you have to do.
right. So, yeah, the beautiful part about the East Coast Lab deal is that you can monitor yourself. You don't need a prescription. You can just monitor, even if you don't know what's going on. Wow, this was here before, now it's here, or it's down here. What's going on? So you can.
I mean, I've been dealing with the thyroid since I was
Yeah,
30 years ago.
right.
So it's, it's kind of like, I can watch for things, or
Right. Yeah.
they should increase your medication, or,
Depends on how you
that's
feel.
how it should be, dealt with.
It depends on how you're feeling. You can't treat somebody by the lab numbers.
Mhm.
You can't treat numbers. You have to, if all of your lab numbers for the thyroid are in the normal healthy person range, but you're walking around dragging
But you
yourself
tell your-
around,
Yeah.
then, okay, we don't care what the numbers are. You
Mhm.
need to increase your medication. Now, I can tell you that 80% of the people that are hypothyroid, low thyroid, 80% of those people are actually autoimmune. Well, and I don't know if you've ever been checked for the
Oh,
antibodies,
yes.
the antibodies to the thyroid.
Yeah. I have rheumatoid arthritis.
Well, yeah, that's another
That's an
autoimmune problem.
autoimmune disease.
Yes, and they go together. If you have an autoimmune condition in one part of your body, you'll have it someplace else. Okay, so you want to be tested at least once a year, and the values in the blood tests are universally accepted, and we talked about the functional range and the laboratory range, right? Laboratory range is the sick people numbers, the functional range is the healthy people numbers.
Can ranges change rapidly within that year? I would presume they can, can't
For
they?
the lab, depends on whether the lab had a big run on diabetics, I guess.
Oh, that's scary. That's scary.
Or a big run on hypothyroid people, that would change their,
How do you ask the doctor to put in for normal values?
most people won't have a clue about what we're talking about.
A doctor I'm talking about.
I know.
He would, okay, thank you.
I've never seen that.
Huh?
I've never seen that.
Oh, this one is my Cadillac program, my Cadillac,
This is a copy
blood.
of it up close if it helps.
yeah. This is the,
It's a sample.
it's my program. I have a program that I can put values into, and it prints out these really nice colorful charts here. What I find more useful when I'm talking with somebody is this thing here that Carol was showing you. So this is much more useful because it gives if you're low, or you're high, normal, or it's elevated, and it gives you reasons why you might be having your values elevated or low. But sometimes people like colors, so I have a color thing here I can do.
No, sometimes it's more elaborate, it brings your eye to something that should be trained to look at, and
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, it can be helpful. So, the thing everybody's really concerned about is cholesterol. And you can see the range here is between 100 and 199. And those are the laboratory sick people numbers, remember? 100 to 199. If you start going below 150, you're not going to make hormones. You need hormones. You need cholesterol to make hormones. Why are these numbers like that? Because there's so many people walking around with cholesterol medication, right? So the people who are going into the labs are going in there with cholesterol levels really, really low because they're on cholesterol medication. Well, I've had people come in and looked at their lab work and their cholesterol was 118 and their doctor was trying to get them down to 100. That tells me that doctor completely forgot what it is they learned in medical school about where hormones come from. Everything, all your hormones, your testosterone, your estrogen, your progesterone, your DHEA, your cortisol, everything comes from cholesterol. You don't have enough cholesterol, you don't make enough hormones.
You don't live too long. Yeah, I have too much, maybe too much cholesterol.
Too much cholesterol? Yeah, maybe.
I'll share with you.
Okay. So, what do we need to talk about here? Anything? Eosinophils. No, let's look at the CBC a little bit. Okay, so here's your CBC. It's on the next page here too. Okay. So here's your CBC. Hemoglobin, hematocrit, red blood cells, MCV, MCH, MCHC, up here, red blood cells, white blood cells, neutrophils. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. This is the kind of information you can get from the blood work. Let's say your white blood cells were, okay, the normal functional range between 5 and 8. This one's at 6. Beautiful, right? Okay, let's say it was at 4. What does that mean? If your white blood cells are low, it means you have a chronic infection. Usually you have a chronic infection. If the white blood cells are on the elevated side, instead of 5 to 8, they're at 9 or 10, then that's an acute infection. You're dealing with something right now, like a respiratory infection, a gastro infection, a urinary infection, a splinter that got infected. You got soldiers that are patrolling your body trying to fight infection, like now.
Try 23,000.
Yeah. So if that's the way it is, you got an infection going on, then you have to look at these two guys after the white blood cells, neutrophils and lymphocytes. Because if you've got a bacterial infection that's going on, then what's going to happen is your neutrophils are going to be elevated and your lymphocytes are going to be low. If one is elevated, the other one's going to be low. Because they come from the same body. If you've got a bacteria that infects your body, most of these cells are going to, they're mast cells, most of them are going to convert into neutrophils, bacteria. Most of them are going to become neutrophils. What's going to be left over is the lymphocytes. If you've got an invasion, it comes in and it's virus. The virus attacks you. Most of these guys are going to become lymphocytes. What's going to be left over is neutrophils. So you got this seesaw relationship between neutrophils and lymphocytes most of the time. So that's a good way to figure out, okay, you got a viral infection, you got a bacterial infection, you go to the doctor and you have some kind of respiratory thing going on. If you can just get a CBC, you can a lot of times just look at it and figure, is this person have a virus or does this person have a bacteria? Well, if the person's got a virus, then it really doesn't make a lot of sense to take an antibiotic then, does it?
No.
Because we know, everybody knows that antibiotics don't work on viruses. But if it's a bacterial infection, then it will be appropriate to use something like that, right? So it's nice to have that information so you don't take an unnecessary medication. And therefore make your system so that if you do get invaded, it becomes resistant to that antibiotic and you can't use it anymore, right? Now the other one you want to look at is monocytes. Monocytes are, they're kind of, when they're elevated, There, unless they're really, really elevated, then you've got mononucleosis, okay? But if they're a little elevated, you're really non-determinative. It doesn't really give us a lot of information about, why it might be a little elevated. But the eosinophils, when those are elevated, that's going to most of the time tell you that you've got allergies or parasites. And if it's parasites, it's usually really elevated. And these next guys here, the basophils, they'll be elevated too. So, allergies, parasites, these can be parasites to the basophils. Otherwise, they're kind of non-determinative either. If I just saw the basophils elevated and I didn't see the eosinophils elevated, I might think, nothing I can really say about that. C-reactive protein, that's a really great marker for you to see, because C-reactive protein is a marker that's going to tell us whether there's some serious inflammation that's mostly attacking the heart. If you've got elevated C-reactive protein, most of the time that's an inflammatory substance that's affecting your heart. You might see it with a small h, small s in front of it for high sensitivity, but it's a cardiac marker. You can test it other places too, but most of the time when they test it, they're testing for the cardiac system. And when it's elevated, it will be one of the reasons you could have a heart attack. We got homocysteine on here. Another marker you want to check for blood work, and it's not on here, is homocysteine. Fibrinogen is a really good marker. Breaking down some of these, the lipid panels here, and getting some other things like large cell and small cell LDL proteins, and type 2 and type 3 HDL proteins. That's kind of an interesting thing.
Isn't that all your cholesterol?
Yeah, it's a cholesterol marker, but it's a further breakdown of it.
Is that like the CDLC or something? It's like 4 letters?
Yeah. Like for instance, there's two HDLs. Everybody thinks about the HDL cholesterol as being the good cholesterol. Okay, well there's actually 2 HDLs, and a lot of times people, and one of them is really very good, and the other one is not so good.
I like the one in the other one.
And so everybody knows that if you drink some red wine, that your good cholesterol will go up. It'll be elevated. You can elevate your good cholesterol by drinking wine.
You'd have to stay inebriated to keep it up there, wouldn't you?
Well, the point is that it elevates the bad HDL.
Oh, okay.
If there isn't a bad HDL, there's a type 2 and a type 3. The type 3 is a bad one, and that's the one that gets elevated with the wine. But most people are walking around saying, okay, we need to elevate your HDL, so drink some wine every night.
If your LDL is low, does that affect your HDL?
No.
LDL.
And again, you don't want your LDL to be too low, because it's also carrying nutrients to the rest of your body. You usually think of the LDL as being bad, and none of them are good or bad. It's just that you want the ranges to be okay. So if you got really low LDL, then your total cholesterol is probably going to be really low. You don't want your total cholesterol to go less than 150. And then here's some thyroid markers: TSH, T4, T3, free thyroxine index, T3 uptake, free T4, free T3. I got the other markers up there? No, yeah. Anyway, there's more thyroid markers too. The point is, you can look into as much detail as you want the blood. If you want to ask for it and test for it, you can find anything in somebody's blood. It's right there. Let me see. TSH. So, again, when somebody comes to see me, I'm not just going to look at somebody's blood work and say, okay, this is what we need to do. Otherwise, I'm going to be doing the same thing everybody else is doing too, maybe treating lab numbers. You have to talk to somebody and see what kind of symptoms that they're having, what are their concerns, what's the major sphere of influence with this person's problem. Is it mostly mental, emotional? Is it a chemical problem? Is it a physical problem? What's going on with this person? And so I'll use questionnaires like this that are very helpful, because they tell me, just by looking at it, I can say, okay, you got most of the 2s and the 3s over here. You got most of the 2s and the 3s over here, you got a problem with your large intestine. You got most of the 2s and 3s over here, it's mostly you're not making enough hydrochloric acid. You got too many 2s and 3s over here, you got hyperacidity. You got 2s and 3s here, this is problems with your small intestine. You're not absorbing nutrients out of your food. You could have a great diet, but you're not absorbing the nutrients. So you can see, this one here tells me if this thing's going on with the liver and the gallbladder. This one here, these two are really important, because this is telling me you have hypoglycemia, and this one's telling you have insulin resistance or diabetes. So this one here is telling me you have low adrenal glands. This one's telling me you have elevated adrenal glands. This is telling me you have a low thyroid. This one here is telling me you have a hyperthyroid, overactive thyroid, pituitary and high and low, and prostate symptoms, menopause, andropause symptoms, the male counterpart of menopause, and then a menstruating female, and then a menopausal female. You know, what are your likes and dislikes? What are the 3 foods that you like and 3 foods that you dislike? You know, what's your stress level? Do you eat food? Do you smoke? I mean, do you eat nuts or fish? You know, see what somebody's fatty food intake is. You want to get some good quality fatty acids in the diet. What's your stress level on a scale of 0 to 10? So those are important, because then I can take the findings on the exam, the physical findings on the exam, and I can take the information that this person has given me, what are the 5 things that are of most concern to you, and then I can take the blood and do my exam and get information that I get patterns that develop when I'm going through my exam with somebody, and I listen to their story, and I get the blood work, and it confirms one of those patterns, so we're not guessing, right? All these things are pointing this way, and if I can give you reasons why you're feeling the way that you are, then you're probably going to be a little bit more likely to take some of the suggestions that I might make to make some changes in the reason that made you walk through the door. Okay. Make sense? So I don't want to be that kind of doctor that, you know, you come in, you sit down, and you have a problem, and okay, let's just throw you on the table and do the back pain treatment, or let's do the headache treatment, or, you know, I want to get a little bit more complete picture of what's going on with somebody, so I can kind of, you know, fine tune what it is that they need, and give them what it is that will give them the most bang for the buck. So this is what we're all trying to do, and the homeostasis is, you know, your body's natural tendency to balance and not be too high or too low in anything, and that's our natural tendency. Sickness is the movement away from homeostasis. In a nutshell, that's all sickness is. It's normal, healthy, no big deal. If your attention is drawn to this little space here, your little space, not my space, okay? If your attention is drawn to your little space, you know, oh my God, I got this hemorrhoid, you won't believe it, I keep you. Okay, if your attention is just drawn to a part of your body, then you're not in homeostasis, are you? You're not in balance. You should, being healthy should be someplace where we can have mental clarity, emotional stability, freedom from physical ailments, restraints, constrictions. You know, being able to go through the full range of human emotion without our attention being drawn to this little space here. That's really what health is, right?
And that's possible?
Of course it's possible. If you're breathing, it's possible.
That's questionable for me right now too, but I mean, that'd be a nice thing to feel.
Yeah.
Is that cheap?
Well, everything is chi.
Okay.
That tree is chi. It's just having
It's happy.
a tree experience.
There you go.
Yeah. You and she just having a Carol experience right now.
That's a right, well, right.
So, well, that's the experience that you're having right now. Everybody else is the same chi, but they're having different experience. So, the nice thing about on this physical plane here is we have something that we can determine what level our ailments might be at, whether it's vitamins or minerals or fluid electrolyte imbalances, right? You know, people die from too much water, not enough water. Antioxidants, those are the things that keep you from aging. Antioxidants help you tissues to break down.
Give a good example of an antioxidant.
Okay. And you're right on, Tom. Most people, there's a lot of people out there talking about antioxidants, and they're really not sure what it is. So to give you a picture of what an antioxidant is, I have to give you an idea of what they use to help. Okay. Okay, so this is a carbon atom, okay? Now, I'm picking carbon because we're carbon, you're carbon, all these living things are carbon. So the carbon atom's got 6 of these protons here and 6 neutrons, and it's got 6 of these electrons all floating around here like that, right? Like the atoms, right? Okay, here's what a free radical is. You only got 5 of them out there. So now what happens? This atom is going to go over here, and it's going to steal an electron from this atom. So what happens now? This one's short, right? So it goes over here. You got another carbon atom here. This got 6 electrons. This one steals an electron from this one. Now this one's short. So you get this chain reaction that keeps on going and going and going and going. Well, how this chain reaction shows up in your physical body is tissue destruction. Wrinkles, cartilage wearing out, parts of your body just wearing out. That's what free radicals do. That's a free radical. So how do you fix free radicals? You fix free radicals by taking you fix free radicals by taking antioxidants, because here's what antioxidants do. Here's what the antioxidants do. They take and they give you the electron. So it stops that whole chain reaction from continuing. That's what antioxidants do. So you can test. You can test your system for antioxidants.
Sure, atoms, everything is carbonating in blood, that's what keeps your body
Yeah,
together.
Yeah, and it's in your blood. You can test those things. So you can use enzymes. You have digestive problems, and you can use enzymes. Your blood work will tell you that you're not making enough enzymes to help you to digest your proteins and your carbohydrates or whatever. So you can use some nutritional things to help those imbalances.
Excuse me a minute, Dan. Go back up to fluid and electrolyte regulation.
Yeah. Yeah, if that's off, then your sodium or your potassium or your chloride or your CO2 on the CMP, the complete metabolic panel, that part of your blood, which she paid $10 for, maybe 12, I think they might have raised the price. But she paid $10 for the complete metabolic panel over at the East Coast Labs on Wednesdays. And it gives you all that information. It gives you information about your kidneys, it gives you information about your liver, it gives you information about your electrolytes, it gives you information about your calcium, your BUN, your creatinine. It gives you information about these things for $10, $12 over on Wednesdays at East Coast Labs. You can get that information. But the electrolytes, yeah, Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
Theoretically, if we were to infuse a person who is ill, maybe they have a range of illnesses, with perfect blood, what would happen and how long would it last?
You know, it's the same, I guess the answer to that is really the same as if you had a business that was $1 million business, and you built it up to $1 million business, and you knew somebody that had a business that was in the dumper, and you guys both switched businesses, and you ran that business, and then the person came in to run your $1 million business, and what happens in a year is that the person that took over your $1 million business runs it into the ground, and and you take this person's lousy business and you build it up to another $1 million business.
Mhm.
So it's got to do with the person. It's not about the blood. It's what they did in order to get their blood to be
In that way?
in that way. So if they don't make any changes, then they're going to run down the good blood too. Like Keith Richards.
It's a good example.
So it's to keep your internal organs and everything
Keith
functioning.
Richards is a guitar player for the Rolling Stones, and what he was known for through his very, well, he would periodically have his whole blood system transfused. He would get a transfusion of blood every periodically to, get rid of all the toxic blood that he contaminated.
Oh, that I do know.
Didn't do him any good.
They look rough. The strolling bones look pretty rough.
How does genetics work with all this?
Genetics can be a factor in how you end up where you are, but just because you have a particular gene, it doesn't mean that you have to express that gene. So we get reasons why we might have problems, and genetics can be a part of that. But you have something going on, and your sister doesn't have that going on, and a lot of times our problems happen. And what you have to look at also is genetics. Is genetics because we actually have it in our genes, or is genetics because most families usually have a tendency to live the same type of lifestyle, eat the same types of diet, at least initially, and therefore have a tendency to develop the same types of problems. So the term that most people are looking at now is really epigenetics. And epigenetics means, okay, there is a genetic component going on with what happens to us, but our genes can be altered, whether they're going to express themselves or not, based on what kind of a lifestyle we have too. So yeah, you can have bad genes and you live like a monk and you feel really pretty good.
Yeah.
Or you can blow it and feel really lousy.
Talking about lifestyle, I think sometimes we underestimate our own immune system, which is not to be confused with your immune system, but your